Good morning, President. One thing we have seen as we have been around the country is that cities are increasingly relying on what they call their anchor institutions to become axes of growth and development, hospitals, foundations, universities. I'm wondering how the thinking has changed at each of your institutions over the last few years about the role that you can and should play in helping to revitalize the communities where you operate.
So I think universities have been catalysts for economic growth and development, at least in this country, since they have been formed. And I think we have always been thinking in the same manner. For us, I mean, I have been here in Houston now for 11 years almost, and I can tell you 11 years ago, when I came here, that was one of the things I came, not because I knew University of Houston so well at that point in time. I came from Florida. But I came here because I knew the Houston. I knew the Houston's economy. And I said, it doesn't make any sense to have an institution, a public research university, that is not a Tier 1 university in a city like Houston. There's just no way. So I came with my personal agenda of that we need to build a university for Houston, whether Houston demands it or not. And sure enough, I mean, Houston has been so supportive. And I think we have always seen our role as being that anchor institution, whether it's workforce, whether it's intellectual capital, and we continue to do that in so many different ways.
President Leebron?
What we have really learned is we can both be a global institution and be an institution that's very committed to our home city of Houston and Harris County and the surrounding area. I think universities, particularly urban universities, are playing a critical role, many different roles across the city. And so when we, for example, did our strategic plan about 12 or 13 years ago, one of our planks was that we would engage with the city of Houston. That was really, as the Rice expression, get out beyond the hedges. It's a great resource for educating our students. We had many research efforts that we could engage with in the city. But we recently sat down to redo our strategic plan. And that plank emerged this time as to engage with and empower the city of Houston. And we've seen that, for example, in our role in developing the Midtown Innovation District, which is really a district.
Could you talk a little bit about that as like kind of a specific example and how it differs from the way you might have interacted with the community 5-10 years ago?
Again, I was recently asked the question whether strategic plans matter, and they do. And so we had developed a strategic plan that we were going to engage with and empower the city of Houston. And when we saw this need and an opportunity, we took back the land. We had sort of leased it to Sears, and Sears has had a few difficulties. And so we took back that land. That was about 9.5 acres. We now have over 14 acres. And for example, we were clear from the beginning, this was not going to be a Rice-branded project. This was not to expand Rice to Midtown. We had a vision for this. We had the land, and we've made a very substantial investment in this property to really put forth a piece of what Houston needs to become a real center of technology and innovation. And we have such a fantastic base to build upon in this city with the energy industry and the medical enterprises in the city. So we had no doubt that this was something we wanted to do that would help not just the future of Houston, but also actually our future. We need to be in a city that's known as a tech city.
And so the ongoing role for Rice in a project like this, beyond the initial investment and the initial kind of conception, what is your kind of ongoing relationship, and does that envision a different kind of level of involvement than you've had previously?
Well, it clearly does. So the property is owned by what we call the Rice Management Company, which holds the assets of our endowment, and so it will manage the property. But it otherwise won't be directly managed by the university. Again, all sort of 10 principal institutions of higher education in the city of Houston signed on to participate. And so we hope all of those institutions, some were about equidistant to the property from the University of Houston. Houston Community College is really 2 blocks away. Texas Southern is a little further. The University of St. Thomas isn't far away. So we want this property to evolve into a real anchor for technology and innovation and startups in the city of Houston, which isn't to say there won't be many other areas around the city that serve a similar role.
Well, you have a third ward initiative. That's where University of Houston is located. Talk a little bit about, same kind of question, what that engagement actually looks like, and does it represent a evolving of the role of the university with the surrounding community?
It absolutely does. So we live it every day, the divide in Houston or the income gap. You know, our neighborhood, which is Third Ward, high crime, low socioeconomic status. And 10 years ago, since you've been asking as to how it has evolved, I mean, 10 years ago, I felt the University of core commitment, core mission. And core mission being, you know, our graduation rate for students was just like what it typically is. We have to own our core mission, and let's make sure the student success becomes our no excuse top priority. And as we grew that, as we developed that, and as we evolved into a tier 1 institution, the question came, well, shouldn't we have a tier 1 neighborhood for our tier 1 institution? But the problem was historically we just hadn't had a very engaged relationship. So we sat down with the community leaders and we said, well, what is it that we can bring to the table? It's not that we have solution for you, because that's the first thing you'd never do, and tell them, I know what is good for you. And the community actually worked very well with us, and now we have a 4-pronged approach to it, very, very systematic, very intentional, very strategic. And the goal is, because I know that area will get development, because I can see private development coming there. The fear that we have is that the people might get displaced.
Yes, right.
And that's not what we want. I mean, so the challenge I gave to our faculty and staff was that we need to figure it out how to shape the development in this area or whatever is going on in future without displacing the people. Because if they got displaced, what's the role of the university? So we have 6 public schools, HISD-run public schools, that we started, 9 colleges started to go out and work. I said, just don't use any excuse that it's because of this or because of that. We have every possible discipline to really help out. If it's parent engagement, if it's language issues, if it's eyesight, we have every kind of thing. Let's just go out and see what can we do to empower. Well, this year, I know one of the HISD school, and I'm not saying it's because of us, but it's just because of the partnership we built. One HISD school got Harvey waiver, but the other 5 are no longer failing the schools there. So it's possible to move the needle. But then we are also running, from our business school, we are running a small business boot camp. And so far, 19 businesses have come out from the residents in the Third Ward. We have envisioned an arts mile from University of Houston's Arts District all the way to the Emancipation Park with the studios and restaurants. And I think it's going to be hugely empowering to the neighborhood. So it's a project that I think it makes us better as a university, because you need a tier 1 neighborhood, and I think it helps the neighborhood. But I think for Houston, we want to prove that, you know, diversity and excellence are not mutually exclusive.
Well, let's talk about that, because earlier today, I cited what John Hickenlooper, who's now the governor of Colorado, when he was the mayor of Denver, he talked about what he called the Denver paradox. That was the phrase he used, which was the city, like Houston, was so attractive and so economically dynamic that it was attracting young people from all over the country and all over the world to compete for the jobs it was creating, but it could not put its own young people from low-income and minority neighborhoods on track to really be part of that economic growth. Both of you, I mean, the University of Houston is one of the most diverse public institutions in the country. Rice is also, I believe, a majority-minority student body, which is, and I want to ask you 2 questions about that. First, what does it take to create a pipeline of students from low-income and minority neighborhoods who are equipped to apply for and transition into your how do you work with the school system, or what is required to get kids on the track to begin, to just come in the front door?
So pipeline issue is definitely a very serious issue. And recently, we have started a project which is the largest of its kind in the nation. It's called the GPS, so the Guided Pathways to Success. And in that project, we have 11 public institutions in Houston, all in one consortium under one data set. And these include TSU, UH Downtown, University of Houston, and then it has 6 community colleges. And the idea is no matter where you enter this pipeline for your education, your post-secondary education, you should have a seamless pathway to wherever you want to go so that you are not wasting any credit hours. You don't know where shall I go and what can I take, because it makes no sense for a 120 credit hour degree. Why should students, and particularly those who cannot afford to pay tuition, are earning 150 credit hours? So that impacts 350,000 students here in Houston. Wow. We have been called all over the country to talk about the GPS. How do you get everybody under one data? So it's all big data, it's all data analytics. It's going to change the face of that pipeline, at least from that angle. But we have, of course, many, many programs with high schools, middle schools, because that's where you have to start inspiring people. We open our campus, throughout summer to just get people to come in.
Is that just for a visit, or are there transitional programs for?
There are many, many transitional programs, because in my chancellor's hat, we have 8 locations here. 7 of those 8 locations are in Houston, and we have 75,000 students, and some of them working 30 hours, and they are as important. I mean, for me, the whole thing is, yes, we were built with the mission that the University of Houston is for working men and women. Who would say that the working men and women deserve only average? I aspire absolutely 100%, absolutely excellence education for them, globally competitive.
Let me come back to that in a minute, but President Leebron, creating a pipeline for a private institution.
Well, I think there are different parts of it. Some of it's in the pipeline, and some of it's really in affordability and accessibility. As you noted, we are institutions in the country, certainly one of the most diverse private universities in the country. Very recently, we announced what we called the Rice Investment, which is a new financial aid policy, which is both to provide generous financial aid, but also to make it very clear and transparent, so that I think I can describe it in 30 seconds. Sure. Under $65,000 of family income, Rice will provide grants that cover tuition fees, room and board. That is really almost all expenses. Between $65,000 and $130,000, Rice will provide a grant that covers at least full tuition, and between $130,000 and $200,000, we will provide a grant that covers at least half tuition. So very few universities have financial aid policies that they can describe in 30 seconds. And that's important, because what you see is people thought there's an undermatching problem in which students from poorer backgrounds don't think they can go to a school like Rice. So that's a big part of it. And the other thing is, I think, as Renu has pointed out, it's really incumbent upon us to be involved in the schools in various ways. We do a lot of teacher training. We bring a lot of children on the campus every year just so they can see what a university looks like. We now have an effort at Rice producing free textbooks for college students, and also moving into high school and AP students. People often don't know this. A single college textbook can cost $400. Yeah. This is not just a benefit for Rice, but for community colleges, not just in Houston and Texas, around the country.
So let me ask both of you, and I'll stick with you, President Leebron, to start. Getting students of color and low-income families into higher education is one thing. Getting them out is another. But I was struck in looking at the data on both of your institutions that your 6-year completion rates are actually quite similar for white, Latino, and African-American students, which is not the case nationally. So I'm interested in what each of you have learned about improving those completion rates and avoiding the circumstance where, low-income kids start, accumulate costs, and never finish. How have you converged these completion rates across racial lines?
I think the reference before to some kind of bridge program, you have to remember these are very talented students we take in. They're all very highly qualified, but they didn't all have the same advantages. They may have gone to high schools without a lot of AP programs, for example, not have the same opportunities for teacher engagement. So we bring a number of these students in early over the summer and give them a chance to really understand what the Rice environment would look like. And we have an advantage. We're relatively small in size, and that gives us the opportunity for really retail attention to every student and a focus on every student. But it's really not in our view, just about the academics. What students really need to do, they need to feel a part of the community. They need to feel welcome in that community. They need to feel not just sort of welcome in the classrooms, but every kind of activity that goes on across the community. And I think if you achieve that sense of welcome, you're really going to advance your graduations a lot.
I think that's a very, very good question. We learned it hard way because we don't charge any tuition. I mean, it's a free education, no tuition, no fee for any student whose family income is $50,000. And you can imagine for us, you know, the kind of students we get, that's a, you know, nice size number. What we learned is that those students, their graduation rate really wasn't any better than it was for the rest of the group. So which meant that we actually had to focus on other things, and we had to dissect the learning habits and the environment and experience for different groups. And so the advisors, you know, they had to take the responsibility of not just sitting and advising, but what happened to your cohort and whether they came back or what's their GPAs. The minute you change the accountability system, you see, you know, how things start to change. So we have many, many programs. One of those are programs which, you know, people may not realize. I mean, we take pride in the fact that we can provide opportunity for students to commute, you know, stay at home, work, and they still come. And still, we have 8,000 students who are residential students. We built a program called UH in 4. And in that program, for 4 years, your tuition is fixed. You get guaranteed seat, you have advisor, you have intrusive system that won't let you take a wrong class because you will get pinged on your mobile phone to say you are in a wrong class, this is not going to count. We did all of that. We thought maybe few students will take it. Now 2/3 of the class is in that UH in 4 class. They are not graduating in 6 years. They are graduating in 4 years.
The experience is if you can get people out faster, you're more like, right? The longer it goes, often the more attrition you face?
Absolutely. Yeah. It is very true. But for us, it's also a motivation for also, you know, giving them the sense of belonging, because for us as a public university in a metropolitan area, it's really about two things. It's about scaling, because we can't have a boutique type of program. We have to scale it. And the secondly is a public mission. We cannot and never, ever forget what that public mission is. So we keep very good tab on what is it, what's our sticker price, what's our actual cost. We gave out $364 million in financial aid. But that's not enough. There's all kinds of other things.
I'm going to bring in the audience in one moment for a question, but I want to ask you, Steve Murdoch, who has been at Rice, former Census Bureau head for George W. Bush, has written very eloquently about the intertwined generational and racial change that Texas is living through. And the question of, you know, now we are at a point where a clear majority of the under 30 and certainly the under 18 population are kids of color, and yet the over 50, especially the over 60 population is still predominantly white. It is the condition for the country overall, and he raises the question of whether this older generation sees a stake in equipping this younger, more diverse generation with the skills they need to reach the middle class. Certainly we have seen in many states a decline in public support, in taxpayer support for public higher education, a shift of responsibility to families. Do you feel, as you interact with leaders in the state, that there is, in fact, a commitment to doing what it takes to help more of these kids from lower income minority communities reach the middle class?
So I certainly have seen that commitment. And I want to say one of the most important things we do, which is reflected in those remarks, is we do research about this. Yeah. We have, for example, at Rice, the Kinder Institute for Urban Research, what Steve Murdoch does. So both of our universities generate a huge amount of information and understanding through data that, particularly in areas like this, no other institution is doing in our society. But what I really want to say is I've lived in a lot of different cities across the country. I've never seen a city like Houston in terms of the philanthropic commitment in the city, in terms of what people care about in the city, in terms of advancing the least well-off people in the city, and in terms of solving the really fundamental problem the city does face, which is the education of our poorer and underrepresented minority communities.
Oh, it's most definitely true. In Houston, ditto. Everything David has said is very true. I mean, it's a very special city, a very special community. Otherwise, we won't be where we are. And I mean, I probably wouldn't be where I am because their support from the city is extremely important. However, in the state also, we are a public university. I'm in Austin, all the time. And there is a genuine commitment to how do you take the demographics that we see in the state. Immigration is not going to solve the problem. You can keep on bringing people in, but that's not. We have to educate our own people. And we have to educate them not for the average, but to be the global leaders. And I see that. Now, of course, you can say, well, there's not much a state commitment, in terms of funding for higher education. That speaks differently. But I'll tell you, I'm blessed to be in Texas because I know what's happening in many other states, In Texas is still, our governor is committed, our delegation is committed. I mean, there are certain realities, and we have to do our job in making sure that we are running our operation as good as possible.
Leanly as, yeah.
Yeah, and which we have been doing. I mean, the collaboration. I mean, the two of us, we have over 280 collaborative projects together. Our students can take 6 credit hours in each other institution. I mean, it's better to have 2 horsepowers than the 1, right? I mean, it's simple enough. And that's what we do here.
Don't forget the red tie I wore for you.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's true.
Let's see if we got any questions. Do we have any questions in the audience? There's a couple in the middle. If we can't really see up here, so we're like totally dependent on our mic runners. And there it goes.
Okay. Bob Ford. I'm a retired Texas Southern University professor and administrator. I love Chancellor Khator's reference to Tier 1 community. Could you describe that, and how does it intersect with the mayor's notion of complete community, of which 3rd Ward is one?
First, I'll take credit for mayor because he's our graduate. So first of all. Okay, our goal and vision fits exactly in that complete communities thing. I mean, there is no reason why people who are there and who may have had whatever circumstances, whatever their background. And that's what I say to the students too. We get so many from our neighborhood also. And I visit every single freshman class. I visit every single freshman students. And what I tell them is that don't limit your dreams. You can do it. And the bottom line is I want them to feel special when they walk on the University of Houston campus, regardless of wherever they have come from. And that's why we've transformed the institution as well, because I want them to leave from the university thinking they can do anything. So yes, keeping the community in that neighborhood and is still having for them opportunities, the economic opportunities, the educational opportunities, health opportunities. I mean, we're bringing a medical school on board. It's going to be a clinic will be right there in the community. We shouldn't be sitting just 3 miles from the Texas Medical Center, and that community constantly keeps telling me, we don't have any clinic here, we don't have any hospital here, we don't have healthcare access here. I mean, you got to build everybody together.
One more, if we have a question. Mic is moving.
I know, you can stand up. Hi, I'm Hamida. I work at Amana Refugee Services, and it was actually founded by a group of students on campus at U of H in around 2008. And I actually wanted to tell you a little bit about my friend Yasmin. She's a Syrian refugee. She goes to Sharpstown High School because that's the area she was resettled in due to limited government funding. She's very, very intelligent, and she's actually graduating a year early. So I think that she can actually be one of the global leaders that you're describing. So I want her to be on the college track. I've been encouraging her to apply, but when I first asked her, she didn't know what a GPA was. And I found that to be problematic because I really, really believe that she can be successful and go to college, but for some reason that's not a priority in her high school. Maybe because it's lower income. I'm not really sure exactly what the reasons are. I just see it as a potentially lost opportunity. Yeah. So do you have any transitional programming for people that have those language and cultural barriers, but that do have that promise that, Wes Moore kind of talked about?
Definitely. We do have English language program, but what happens in high school, we have to take responsibility for that too. We can't simply say, well, they're not coming prepared to us, because whose teachers are teaching there? They're our teachers too, right? So we are the ones who have trained them. There's another, very good project that's going on, and that's Good Reason Houston. And I think some of those things are trying to just close those gaps where people think it's not for them or it's not, available to them. And we have several things. We take things to high schools, to middle schools. We bring them on board. But it's such a big place, things fall through the cracks. We have to do much, much better job of making sure people know. Just creating pipelines isn't going to help.
You talked about undermatching before.
Yeah, and a huge problem is the public schools are hugely under-resourced in terms of college counseling. And one of the things we do is we send both faculty and students out into the schools. The students themselves, that is our students, are a huge resource in going into the schools, programs like Teach for America as well. But we really need to get both the information and the aspiration into the schools. And when we do that, I think we see much more success. And so please contact us, either of us, and we'll sort of look for the way to develop a contact with the school to really raise that level of aspiration.
President, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.